All right, we're doing a lesson on writing expressions and equations. This is the second lesson that I've done with this group, and we're just going to read through this and set them up. So on number 13 up here it says 7 more than the quotient of a number and 2 is 10. So when we see a number, you can pick a variable. If they don't tell you what to use, you can use x or n, whatever makes sense. The thing that I want you to look at is whenever you see more than, it's going to kind of switch the order of things when we write it down. So we're actually going to start with the quotient of a number and 2 first. So that's going to look like, I don't know why I'm writing a q. Let's just use x. So x over 2 is the quotient of a number and 2. And then 7 more than, we plus 7 is 10, would be equals 10. So that's just the first setup. And when you see is always equals. And so that's the word you're going to see the most often when you're writing equations, but it could be other verbs. When we get into story problems, it could be is, was, were, has, have. All of those state of being verbs show up a lot. Okay, so let's look at number 14. 5 less than twice a number is 7. So when I see those words less than, I know that I'm going to switch the order of what's going on here. So I'm going to start with twice a number. So how do I write twice a number?
2x.
x2, 2x. I usually want to put the 2 in front. Good. And then 5 less than would be minus 5. Good. And then is 7 is just equals 7. Good. And so a lot of these have those more than, less than. On the more than, when you're adding, you actually could leave it in the order it is, because with adding, you can switch order. With subtracting, switching the order changes things quite a bit. And so if you just get in the habit, if you see that more than, less than, just go ahead and switch it. It usually will help you not mess up. Okay, so let's look at 15. 1 less than the product of 4 and a number is 11. So does one of you want to try it? Why don't you go ahead and try it?
4x minus 1 equals 11.
Good. So the product of 4 and a number, you did 4x, 1 less than minus 1 is 11, is equals 11. There's a lot of these examples on this worksheet that I'm using, so we're going to skip down a little bit. I'm going to skip 16 and just go down to 17. And it says 10 more than the quotient of a number and 3 is 12. So let's look at that one. Do you want to try this one?
3x plus 10 equals 12.
Okay, you're really close. Since it says the quotient of a number, I might want to do that differently. Why don't you try again?
3 over x.
Okay, so the quotient of a number and 3. So you're closer. The number and 3, it's x over 3. You were so close. And then 10 more than is plus 10 equals 12. I feel like a lot of times the order that we write things down gets really confusing. And so when they do the quotient, they're going to just give it to you in order. The number is x and 3, so it's x over 3. 10 more than, we add on the 10, is 12 goes over here. Okay, so I'm actually going to skip 18 and 19 just to save time, because they're very similar to the ones we just did. But I do want to look at number 20. Now, number 20 is not an equation. It doesn't have an is or anything like that in there, but it is a special kind of phrase. It says the product of 8 and the difference of n and 3. Well, you always want to do what's with, where it says a number, or if it gives you a variable, do that part first. So the difference of n and 3, how would I write that?
N over 3.
So difference,
Or
n minus 3, good. And then they want the product of 8 and this. Well, this already has 2 terms. So if I'm going to take this times 8, I need to take the whole thing times 8. And so the thing that we have to do that's not normal is use parentheses like this. So I do the difference of n and 3 first, and then they want the product of 8 and that difference. And so you end up with an 8 outside the parentheses. And so that's kind of a special case. When you see difference or sum, with the number, that's pretty much an unwritten rule that well, it's actually more of a written rule, that you're going to use parentheses because they want that group first, and then you're going to multiply it, or then you're going to divide it afterwards. And so we have to really focus on this. So when I get down then to going the other way, where we're going to translate the expression or equation into a verbal phrase, which just means we're going to write it in words, the very first one that they have has parentheses. So I'm actually going to start just with the 2, and I'm going to word it kind of like this so I can use this as a model. So if I have 2, I'm going to say the product of 2 and then when I have 5 plus t, I can say the sum of 5 and t, and then is 8. So that sort of all goes together. I should have written smaller, I guess. So when you have these parentheses, that's generally how they're going to do that. The product of the number outside, and then if this is a adding, use the word sum. If it's subtracting, use difference. And when they use this word sum and difference, they let us know we're going to take the product of this and this whole thing, whatever that answer is, and then equals 8. All right, so let's look at the second one. I believe this is supposed to be a minus sign, so we're going to make that a little bit more bold. So let's just go through this one piece by piece. This first fraction, what's a way that we could write it? There's multiple ways. Oh. Okay, so go ahead.
10 less than the quotient of a derivative 2 is 3.
Okay, so he started with the 10, which is fine. So we can say 10.
You could make it way less wordy, though. You could just say, like, 2 times 5 plus t is 8. That was the first one.
How are you? So Silas is going back to 21. Let's talk about that one in a second after I get this one down. So 10 less than the quotient of a and negative 2 is 3. So this one's pretty straightforward. The thing on number 21 that makes it special is these parentheses. So if I just say 2 times 5 plus t, I'm not getting the parentheses out of it. So we have to use the words sum and difference when they have those parentheses to let us know that it's a total that we're taking times a number. So there may be other ways to write it, but you want to make sure that you're using the word sum or difference for this piece, okay? So that's just what the thing I want to make sure. So hopefully that's clear. So when I get down to number 23, I can't just say 7 times b plus 2, because then people are going to think that's 7b plus 2. We have to use a word that signifies that I'm taking 7 times this whole thing. Well, this whole thing is a sum. You could use other words. You could say 7 times the total of b and 2, but I feel like that's even more awkward.
Yeah, but you don't have to say the product of 7 and...
You could say 7 times, yes.
Yeah.
So that part I agree with. So 7 times the sum of b and 2. So yeah, we could make it a little bit less wordy. They tend to use the product of just because times, I don't know if it just make people think it sounds elementary school. I'm not sure why, but that does work. Just make sure that you're using the word sum or total or something to indicate that it's times the whole thing. Okay, so on 24, it's actually a pretty straightforward one. I'm just going to go from left to right. You could do it different ways, so we could say 2 times c minus 5 and make it that simple. Or I could say 5 less than the product, and I'm making it wordy, of 2 and c. There's multiple ways you could write this one. This is what you're going to see most of the time on the answer keys. They're going to use those vocabulary words like product and sum and difference and all of that. But you could also just say 2 times c minus 5 on that one, because it doesn't have parentheses or anything, it would be fine. Okay, so 25, I'm seeing parentheses again. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So do we want to use product or just say times, make it short? Product, times. I'm going to let you guys choose. I'll go ahead and use product, but if you just want to say times, you can. So I'm going to say the product of 17 and the sum of y and 11. I'm running out of room here. I'll just write it right there. 11. Make sure I'm on the screen. And so whenever I see these parentheses, I need to think sum or difference and make sure that I get that in there. And then I feel like number 26 is very similar to a lot of things we've done. If you've already done it, that's fine. I'm just going to skip down and look at some of the things that are at the bottom. Just some more practice. So they're using a little bit different words down here, and they're going to start switching it into some real world things, some story problem type things. So I have the sum of a number and 16 is equal to 45. So let's just start and just go from left to right. The sum of a number and 16. Let's say we're just going to use x for the number. Sum means we're going to do addition. Good. So the sum of a number and 16. And it says is equal to. So that's really spelled out for us. We're going to put equals 45. Okay. On 28, they use the words the product. So product means we're going to be multiplying. So the product of 6 and m. And you can just write 6m. You don't have to put a times sign. In algebra, they leave that out to make it shorter. Is 216. So that one's just pretty straightforward. Number 29, the difference of 100 and x is 57. So when I look at this, because they're just saying the difference of 100 and x, we're not switching order. We need to keep the order the way it is because it is subtraction. So I'm just going to do straight up 100 minus x equals 57. If I see something that says less than, more than, that's generally where we switch order. If it just says difference, sum, you're just going to keep it in the order that it is. Okay, number 30, the quotient of z and 10 increased by 32. So let's just look at that a piece at a time. The quotient of z and 10. How do we usually write quotients in algebra? What does it look like?
Z over 10.
Z over 10. So it's a fraction. And then it says increased by 32. So what does that tell me to do? Plus 32. And there's no equals or anything on that one. They didn't have a verb. This is just a phrase. There's no verb in there. The verbs are where you're going to get your equal sign. I know it's kind of Englishy, but it's true. All right, and then we're going to look at some things that are looking more like some story problems. $18 less than the original price is $48. So we don't know what the original price was, and so instead of saying a number, I'm going to have to pick a variable for this. When you start getting into story problems, we usually want to pick a variable that fits. So if it's a price, I might call it P. So I'm doing $18 less than P. How do I write that?
P minus 18.
P minus 18, good. And then I have a verb, I have is, so that's an equals, and 48. And we get that equation. We tried some of these the other day. Some of us were getting it flip-flopped. So just want to make sure that it's P minus 18, not 18 minus P. Okay, number 32, 17 more than some number is equal to 85. So some number, we don't know what it is. What variable do you want to use? N for number, X?
We use Z.
You use Z. What did you say? S. So I'm going to let you guys pick whatever number you want. I think I'm just going to use N. But you can use whatever number, whatever letter you want because they don't make us use a particular one. So 17 more than N. You could, because it's more than and it's adding, do 17 plus N, but I just want us to be in the habit when we see that more than, less than, just go ahead and switch it around. Typically, they're going to do it this way. when you look at answer keys. So 17 more than some number is equal to 85. All right, on 33. The number of members divided by 6 is 15. So it's mostly straightforward. They use some very clear wording. We just need to pick a variable for number of members. So since it's members, I might make that m. So I could just think of it this way, m divided by 6. Oh, well, that's m over 6. And then it says is 15. And if we were actually doing story problems, after we set these up, we would go ahead and solve them. The reason we're doing this, again, is because this was the part of the test that nobody got everything right on. And so just making sure we all kind of get this under our belts and we know what we're doing. So on 34, it says the total of Joshua's savings and $350 is $925. So the total of Joshua's savings. I'm looking at that, and I would use S for savings because in my mind that's the real noun that I need. And it says total. So what operation do we use for that? Addition. Good. So S plus 350, and then is 925.